Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath,
the podcast where we discuss relationships in movies and our relationships with them.
I'm Polina Grunbaum.
And I'm Diana Rojek-Skonard.
Hello, Diana.
Hey, Polina, what's going on?
How are you? And hello, Heidi. We have a special guest today.
As we promised, we have Heidi Bennett joining us this episode. And this time around, we are talking about Four Friends.
Yes.
It is 1981, but before we get into the description, Heidi, please tell us a little bit about yourself so our listeners know your awesomeness as much as we know it.
Oh my gosh, my awesomeness. It starts in a small town. No.
Yeah, we're going to have a special episode just referring to Heidi's awesomeness. Don't worry.
So, I am a coach for multi-creative, so I'm a professional coach, singer, and podcaster, and I do a bunch of other things, but that's the kind of the this that I do.
You practice what you coach.
Yes,
Very nice.
Exactly. And I started podcasting a couple of years ago with movie-related podcasts. The first one was Spinal Tap Minute. The second one was Cabin Minute Cast about the cabin in the woods.
Picking some great movies.
So this will be different, talking with you ladies about something where we're not going minute by minute, because that's the format of those.
Yeah. Those are really, really fun. I've been diving deep into the Spinal Tap Minute.
Oh,
and
good.
I just listened to your interview.
Oh, cool.
With Viv
Savage.
Savage. Oh my God. I was like, I didn't ever want it to end.
Yeah, he was amazing. So yeah, for everybody listening out there, if you do want to just pop in and hear a really great one, the Spinal Tap Minute episode with David Caff, a.k.a. David Caffinetti, who played Viv Savage in This Is Spinal Tap, lives in the Bay Area.
Ooh.
And I got the hookup, and he came right over to my studio/house and we recorded, and it was really a fun episode.
Yeah, he's also some really great show business stories, like Shaka Khan, Chuck Berry. I just wanted more Shaka Khan stories.
Yeah. Well,
I'm really big fan.
Maybe we can get him back.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about my podcasting history, and then
Excellent.
Yeah, I look forward to just talking about this.
Yeah,
this
there we go.
Yeah. All right. So your choice that you sent to us for this episode, Four Friends, 1981. In the 1960s, a small town group of friends, Danilo, Craig Wasson, David, Michael Huddleston, Tom, Jim Metzler, and Georgia, Jodi Thelen, experience love and life challenges as they branch out and return to each other through the course of the culturally revolutionary decade. One unifying force among them is the love of the three men share for Georgia, who receives and returns all their affections, though none of them are prepared to make a lasting commitment beyond friendship. And we wanted to note that this was directed by Arthur Penn, and the screenplay was Steve Tesich, Tesich.
Right. I believe it's based on a book of his. I think he wrote.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
semi-autobiographical. And when I was looking up the writer of the screenplay, I was thinking, known for Breaking Away, and I'm like, that's just one of those movies that comes up in so many fun podcasts, and it's just like, that's on.
If anybody has a relationship with Breaking Away, please.
I think we need to narrow it down to the people who don't have a relationship, which is you and me. And then
we need someone to school us.
Yeah, I definitely did see Breaking Away, and one thing I'm noticing as I talk with more and more people about pop culture and movies specifically is how many great movies and how much great music my dad turned me on to. So he took my brother and I to see Breaking Away, and it was definitely one of those great films. So,
my dad definitely was a huge movie buff and turned me on to, and my mom as well. But we lived in Princeton when I was in high school, and there was a great movie series every summer, and I just saw my dad likes everything, so it was great. I saw Yojimbo the Bodyguard, and then the next day saw Stop Making Sense. So it was like...
We're right in there. My dad definitely took us to see The Bodyguard and definitely Stop Making Sense. I actually tell a story about that in one of my other podcasts about that being like a welcome home movie to go see that after moving out of town and coming back. And
oh my God.
they picked me up from the airport. This is a very truncated version of the story, but say I was in an unhappy place. They took me to the airport, from the airport, and said, we're going to Tower Theater, Sacramento, to go see Stop Making Sense. And so,
wow.
Yeah, warm the feeling
that's
for
like
that.
Oh, that's so nice.
Pivotal moment there.
Yeah.
Here's my question for you, though. For Friends, how did this movie make it onto your radar?
Oh my gosh. So I texted my friend Amy Franson. She and I were super close buddies in high school. And I knew that she was the one that brought this movie to me, but I was like, how, what? And so I'm gonna just look at my notes real quick here because I copied and pasted what she said.
Sure.
So she said, my dad bought a Betamax, and there were like 4 Beta movies to choose from at the video store. So she chose this because it was one of the few available at the video store. And it actually reminds me of that time. So this came out in 81, so maybe it was released on Betamax in 82 or even later in 81.
Yeah, because they waited a while.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
So I would have been like 16 when I saw this. She would have been 15. So that's definitely a pivotal falling in love or being, really into a movie. But also, one thing I remember hearing on How Did This Get Made, that podcast, is that when you're in that era, there aren't that many movies. And so you end up seeing...
Or TV, or anything. If you didn't
watch the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Totally.
So you don't really have a big, huge selection of things. Yeah.
No. And there are movies and there are TV shows. There isn't like a thing that's 37 minutes that you can fit in. There's just this... That's kind of what you do when you get together. Plus you have time.
Right.
And
so
we
much
weren't
time.
Maybe as overscheduled. So did you watch, so did he own it or did you just rent it? Do you know?
I don't remember if they owned it, but I do remember us kind of falling in love with it and watching it, and we'll get into it. But my nickname in high school that I gave myself was Kizzy, which was short for Isadora Duncan.
Oh my God, really?
And I did not realize until rewatching this morning that I am positive I got it from watching this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Wow. All comes flooding back to you.
Why, what was the thing about Isadora Duncan?
I don't think I was aware of who Isadora Duncan was until I watched this. And then I probably, read a little bit about her. It wasn't like I became some expert or became obsessed with her.
You weren't doing modern dance
like
at the
Georgia,
time.
no. But I do love dancing and I love music. And I think this character, Georgia, even though she's the girl that everybody falls in love with, she's kind of annoying, I found, and I was like, I kind of remember her being a little annoying and sort of a know-it-all, but I feel like I attached to and was attracted to the idea of being the girl, the center of attention, the girl that everybody around her falls in love with, and also being bohemian and quirky and carefree and dancing and, just being comfortable with her body and all that stuff was really... something that I was attracted to and wanted to kind of emulate. So that's probably was
and
more
she's
about
such
her
a romantic,
than
like Isadora Duncan is such a romantic character. I mean, she is just like total iconoclast. Lived this life, moved around, died in a very colorful way. She was
fill in that blank for me.
Okay, so she died. Isadora Duncan died. Because she had wrapped this homemade scarf around her head. I haven't found out the homemade part. I just remember the scarf part. I was looking at this today. She wrapped this scarf around her head, and she was in an open car, like a convertible car. live in a city. Can't remember what cars are like. So it basically wrapped around the
That's right.
and then she,
I think I remember reading
But
that.
the guy in the car, and this is like a weird detail. He was like, he asked her to put on like a coat. Oh. And I'm like, so from then on, I know this is in Wikipedia. I remember that she died in this way, but I don't remember. She was Russian.
Oh.
Yeah. And then and she just like the way that she altered the way that I think a lot of us actually think about bodies too, like Isadora Duncan. Certainly the way that that dancers thought about the human body, I think. So totally makes sense.
Incredible
to be attracted.
So didn't Jane Mansfield die in a similar way?
I remember a car accident being involved, but
something.
In the car
yeah.
I feel like she was decapitated.
Yeah, I think she was. Oh, I think it wasn't a convertible, but I think it was like was actually decapitation. This was like just strangling.
Gotcha. Just strangling.
Just strangling. Anyway, moving on.
This episode got very heavy very quickly.
Yeah. Just watch your scarves. Just that's as a scarf wearer. It was definitely a life lesson.
So, question on my end: my Betamax exposure is minimal. Was there an instance where it was over? Do you rewind it, watch it again? And were there instances where you watched the movie and then instantly went back and watched it again? Or was it just kind of on a daily basis? Did you watch it, like our previous guest would watch it on repeat?
Yeah.
And I have experiences watching on repeat as well.
Okay.
So
like, was this,
the technical aspects.
That you don't know somebody owned that.
I don't remember if she owned it or rented it, but I just remember that we watched it a bunch of times. So,
yeah, totally get it.
Yeah. I don't think it was 20 times, but it was probably 10 times.
Awesome. And you would go and re-rent it.
I mean, if they didn't own it, it was easy to rent. I mean, this is up in the Grass Valley, Nevada City area, the foothills of California.
Yeah.
And so we had, and my other best girlfriend, Penny, her parents were really good at letting us go to the local, place and rent videos too. So she and I tended to get more wacky exploitation kind of teens on camp who's going to lose their virginity first kind of movies.
Right.
And so that's what struck me about this one is this one has this weight and sophistication, and then even the the sex stuff is more sort of realistic and not kind of the so over the top.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's in this movie there's no like desperation of it. It's just that Georgia decided that this is something that she's ready for, and she even makes an announcement of when she goes to. So is it Danilo? Because they say Danilo. I
think they call him Danny for short.
That's what I thought.
Then Danilo is his
his
proper name.
Yeah, his full name. Yeah, she just kind of knocks on his window, and she has decided that. She actually calls it that I came to give you a gift, and that's something that he's hesitating about, though. So it's not, again, one of those teen comedies that, they just, redid again with American Pie, or they did in the 80s with like Last American Virgin. This is something where it's just like, no, this is part of the journey, but it's not like the center of it. And in fact, if anything, it's a kind of a catalyst because he's hesitant. And was there something in there that kind of created, did you have any one of the specific men in this movie that you had eyes for? Because you have 3 different personalities and 3 different, just kind of physical types as well.
Right. So Danilo, it's funny, again, revisiting it, I was like, Craig Wasson kind of looks like whoever played Charlie.
Okay, go ahead.
In... what was that called? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Really?
Oh, interesting.
This is the edit point.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because I know one's one and one's,
Oh, no, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that's the 70s version. Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry, no, that's the more recent Johnny Depp version. And Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, that's the classic. Yeah. So, it's so funny that you mentioned that because I kind of see that. Is it in the mop,
hair,
the mop of the hair? Yeah. The way it lies. No, that's not.
So he reminded me of Charlie.
Okay. Charlie Bucket.
Charlie Bucket.
Oh.
And which I was just on a podcast about that movie called Everlasting Minute. Great podcast.
Ooh.
And I was saying that Charlie didn't really do it for me, but he's kind of cute. But I was just old enough that he was a little too young for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this guy, I think he is kind of this cute romantic poet. He's not like hot, drop dead gorgeous, but I definitely fell for guys like that. I mean, I fell for hot dudes too, but just this kind of cute, quiet.
Yeah.
He's playing music, and I think that's the thing that really made me understand why I liked this movie a lot, besides the romance and the will they, won't they, back and forth thing that happens from beginning to the very end of the movie that they're all playing music in the beginning together, and they're dancing around, and it's so joyous, and he is very musical, and
And in fact, so there's a scene where you're introduced to three of the four friends, David, Tom, and Danilo.
We'll call him Danny.
Danny. Let's just call him Danny.
When I saw him at first, I was just thinking Breckin Meyer. I don't know if you remember him from Clueless.
Yeah.
It's the same mop hair.
I had totally that thing of like, he looks like a guy. And then it was like, he's in Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm like, I did remember seeing that movie, but I'm, terrified of horror movies. So I clearly blocked that out of my head. But he was one of those like, that's a guy. And I kept thinking he was going to be in more, like when I looked him up, I was going to be like, oh, he's probably like in 1,000 things. And I was like, oh, no, nonsense.
Yeah, more like 100.
Yeah, exactly.
I interrupted you. Go
No. So they're walking down the street and they're wearing tuxedos because I guess they had a dress rehearsal.
No, I think it was the real thing. So they're in high school and they're doing their musical performance.
No, but they're doing it after. I think this is like right before, because they said, "Oh, is the senior thing next week?" I thought, but I couldn't.
Go on.
I just saw it once, and you know how my memory is, so I could be wrong. But they're and they were just walking down the street, and they're all like basically heading to Georgia's house. Georgia, the manic pixie dream girl or whatever.
Totally.
I wrote that down. Was she the first one?
Yeah, because she might have been. Because before the phrase was coined. And so she and they go to pick her up, and they're like in the middle of the street and they're playing, and it's it's obviously like early summer, and there's that growing up in the East Coast, like that feeling of early summer and or spring and spring, I think they call it.
Early summer.
When after winter, but before summer. They call it
and
spring.
You're still in school.
Yeah, you're still in school, but it's like winding down, and it's nice, and they're kind of they're running around with their instruments, and even like when you first get introduced to Danny, he's carrying a little flute.
Yes.
Yeah. And music is, you had mentioned it's the use of the soundtrack, of course they work with Georgia, because that's something that Danny plays, constantly. He's playing it after he leaves for college, and just all the different music. I mean, I loved so in the high school thing, they had the dance, all their shoes were left outside, literally a sock hop.
I was like, why are there shoes? Oh, it's a sock hop.
You don't see the
supposed
shoes
to be like
off part.
It's supposed to be like
61.
It's supposed to be 60. Yeah. So it was this
exactly.
whole like that whole transition from the 50s to the 60s.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of it, especially from Danny's perspective. I would say that he's the main character, but also especially since in the very beginning he comes in, his family comes in from Yugoslavia, and he's introduced to his father. He's definitely at least 7 years old, I would say. And so he's just hugging his father for the first time. He has a difficult relationship with him because his father is you work and you...
But that's the first time he's met his father.
And the first time he's ever met his... Yeah.
He was born.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, basically, he left soon after, right? And it's like 7 years now.
Yeah, and then, he grows up, he's in high school, and he's, has his friends, but he's also running back and forth between... one of the things you were saying about, the kind of the quieter character that he has, but when he's in the high school and they're doing these presentations about working at a steel mill or, you know, registering for one of the military branches, he immediately pops up and there's this fire in him saying like no, we're not going to do this, you know, because he eventually goes to study philosophy, and he's a writer and he's a poet, and so you see that fire just kind of come out, and it's like, oh, okay, so, you know, you do like the quiet guy, but also when it comes to something that important to him and he just explodes, I'm like, oh yeah, I do care for that that type of that passion.
Like that.
I do
also
like
I couldn't tell if that scene, because it came after the whole scene where Georgia basically tries to sneak into his room and offer up her virginity as this present,
right?
And he kind of freaks out. Because there was this whole interplay between them, I couldn't tell if maybe I was just being really cynical. I'm like, part of why he did that, even though you could tell he felt that way, was to impress her.
Oh.
Yeah, I think...
You know what I mean?
I think that's interesting. Before we move on, too, just that, where she does go to his window and says, and he says, no, and then eventually says, not with you. Her whole face changes, and she says... I felt like it was Christmas all the way over here. I was going to give you a gift and everything. Like that, when you think about movies you've seen a whole bunch of times, that's like one of the pivotal scenes. So when I think about that movie, I think of that scene and that crushing feeling of being rejected by somebody that you come and tell them you're going to give yourself over to them.
Right.
And so I remember really feeling that, you know, as a 16-year-old. But right after it is that scene you were talking about. And I wonder, I felt like it seemed like it really burst forth from him. But it could also be like because he hasn't lost it yet. Maybe this is also where some of his energy is going to. You know, his...
I didn't even process it that way when I watched it. I was, for some reason, I was processing it as not now. It's like he wanted to wait, but it's still with her. But did he actually say not with you?
Not with you.
Yeah, not with you.
Wow.
And I think my feeling was that he was like, my dad's here.
Yeah.
I was totally confused, I have to say. Like I kind of, if I took a step back and looked at like, if I was a person in this situation, what are those reasons? And they would be like, I've been thinking about nothing but this for this time. I don't want it to happen in the back of the car. I don't want it to happen in the... I don't want to have to think about my dad waking up.
I was actually thinking it one level beyond. Not only do I was even thinking about not wanting my dad also, but like my dad finds out he's going to kick my ass. So I can see that. I read that fear in him as well.
Interesting.
Because it's a very harsh relationship between the two of them. So
I was thinking it was more like, I'm so in love with you, the idea of doing this with you and maybe a casual or even a first time.
Oh, that it's not like a love thing. Yeah. But I couldn't read...
Yeah.
In the movie, I couldn't read it. Like,
yeah.
I kind of had to like take a step back and be like her reaction was perfect. His, I only kind of could get, like, I couldn't get it in the scene. I could only get it after. And he clearly is like, wait, I don't mean this, but she was kind of not going to let it. Right. And then that thing of, like, when you're so, I mean, I really felt like she did that to it. You're so excited about something that you know is going to happen. And suddenly it's like the whole thing just falls apart like Jenga.
And I actually kind of agreed with you because I thought his was just yes but not now type of thing. So just
like,
taking
can we do this in a way that isn't
which does make sense if you think of them as awkward teens, not knowing what to say, not knowing how to express themselves. I mean, earlier in the movie, she says in front of the other boys quite joyously, you know, that he's been sending her poetry.
Right.
Yeah, and even shares it with them.
With them. Yeah, and he's mortified. His head is against the fence.
I felt so bad for him.
Oh, yeah.
Read the room, Georgia.
Well, that's not really Georgia's thing. It's not really about the room, because reading the room,
Read the
because
fence,
reading
Georgia.
the room, is like.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts were, ladies, on this Georgia character.
Well, even everything we've described so far is just like a tiny window of Georgia, because she, you say manic pixie dream girl, and
that's kind of the class.
it's like it's a way to really, really describe her, but at the same time just kind of give her a base level of a personality. Yeah. But she's very like open, and she wants to be free, and she wants to explore the world. But I'm also, in my now mid-30s, and I'm just thinking like, honey, do you even dance? You talk about how you want to be a dancer. I'm all for you becoming a dancer. I haven't seen you dance. Have you have you practiced? Have you done anything? Or is this just like, I want to be this image? And so I'm not entirely sure. So I just want to go like, I want you to have your dreams. Let's look at what it takes to accomplish these dreams. Oh, you're gone. Okay, never mind. I'm sorry.
I really want to hear what, like, I'm going to guess that you probably have what you thought of Georgia when you were 16, and looking like at Georgia now, kind of like what she's saying, are probably really different. I mean, I definitely had that, like, I think one of the flaws of the film, which is the flaws of frankly, way too many films, is that she is always there, but isn't actually like a fully realized person.
Totally.
In a way that I think if I saw this movie when I was 16, I don't think I would have felt that way. I think I would have felt like, yes, I understand her. She's overly excited. Can't sit still. Things that sound familiar to, to you.
Well, also, like, I imagine that isn't necessary at a younger age, because your brain can fill in the gaps. Whereas at opening up now, it's just like, let's look at the bigger picture here. So yeah, I would actually very curious with your rewatching recently, and then you're watching back then. What's the contrast?
As far as I can tell, I can't really remember exactly what I felt about her. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I definitely related to her wanting to be kind of a bohemian and an artist and dress interestingly, and as time goes by, she's getting more and more of that kind of floaty, flippy, hippie, and I kind of went more punk, new wavy, but still similar.
It's like in a way that's like yours and not of the period.
Right. And when I first saw her come onto screen, I was like, that's what she looked like? I couldn't remember, so maybe I'd sort of
it's that,
don't remember exactly what face I was expecting, but her face wasn't all that important to me, I guess. I probably imprinted on her quite a bit.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I remember, and I do believe, like what you said, that there's less to go on there than I would like now. I'd like her to be more fully realized. She is, I guess, if you're thinking of it as through Danilo's lens, if it's
that's
sort of his story, or if you imagine he wrote about his life later, and that's what this movie is. Yeah. That hopefully then, if he's writing about the end and them being maybe, together, that maybe he's telling a richer tale about getting to really getting to know her.
As a full.
But she is kind of. At first I did on the rewatch today. I kind of bristled with her. What does she say to them? Oh, not darling, but she calls them
kiddo.
Kiddo this and kiddo
and she's
that.
Kind of mean at one point where he I think it's David, isn't it, that gets the car?
Mm-hmm.
He's the Undertaker's kid, and she's very, very cruel to him, and she later on, she actually ends up kind of convincing him to marry her, even though she's carrying somebody else's kid. Mm-hmm. Right. But she basically, he gets a car, and he's like, oh, I don't know if I want to take it that far, or I want to, drive all night or whatever. And she basically bullies him into it. Which actually, to me, really rang true of somebody like that. Like, I think that is clearly, and also is, very attractive. Like, I would find it very attractive, is this idea that you do have all this, kind of control over these people, and you're able to play them, in a way. And now it sort of looks manipulative, right? Like,
sure,
maybe, let them like live their best lives or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? But I do, like, that is such a thing of high school too, that you had the person who was sort of the animating force of the group, or, and was the one that kind of was like pushed you to, not be so scared or not worry about, your parents or whatever.
Right.
Or, the test or something that's kind of necessary to having fun, but probably,
She was there to challenge any norm that anybody kind of played into.
Even, like, to the point where, like, clarinet, like, I'm sorry, she plays the clarinet.
Yeah.
And she was like, she was doing this, she just stands up and does this weird sexy dance.
Right.
Like,
right in the middle
of a performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's interesting. But now, like, looking back, when you think of your 16-year-old self, like, are you like, do you feel kind of kind toward that person? Do you feel like that was a step toward figuring out, what it's like to be your own human being?
Kind towards me, you mean? The 16-year-old
like kind
me?
towards yourself as a
Oh, yeah, totally. I
mean,
mean, I'd love to show you some pictures of me with some freaking scarves. And I mean, I had right now I have like a partially shaved head, and I had back then not at 16, but at 17, like crazy hair and crazy scarves and crazy weird looks. And so I'm sure that this movie had some influence on that, and also the music, like the music from the 60s. That's the kind of music that I most am connected to as a performer. I've performed Ray Charles music, and there's quite a bit of Ray Charles in this, and that sock hop and them all dancing around in the 60s, like that is the era that I love the most.
Yeah, I do love music. That was kind of my secret shame when I was in high school. Is I really, really loved.
Well, that's a
Motown.
shame
Because it is,
because that music is amazing.
Yeah, I mean now I realize, but it was like also the Big Chill had kind of come out, and I was into it before, and so it was a little like, oh, that's what like my parents.
The Big Chill got to that huge level of being the soundtrack.
Yes,
like the movie was popular, but then the soundtrack was
exploded
huge, and it kind of did a kind of a big oldies throwback. It felt like
and it was like but I was, I was into it before, and so I don't know, it just became sort of the thing that, we're the alternative kids. We weren't supposed to be into like, that was like the mainstream thing to be into. But I still loved all that stuff. So like I love,
still love it now.
I love it now.
I like going through the Motown catalog for any of my karaoke choices.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yes.
I like Stax.
Me too.
That's the kind of where I like the dirty stuff.
Yeah.
So based off of like just the timeline of the movie itself, we see Georgia and we see Danny and we see David and Tom, just like the three friends as they graduate from high school and then they go off to college, and it's mainly seen from Danny's perspective.
Right.
So you see him, he makes friends with his roommate, who, may I say that while I appreciate his roommate is what did he have? Some sort of...
Well, this is the thing, I was like trying to figure it out. He's got a virus.
Unknown virus.
He talks about a virus, but the only thing it seems to be affecting is his legs.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like unsure.
He's on crutches in college.
Yes.
Okay.
And also in a wheelchair. Sometimes in a wheelchair, sometimes in crutches.
Yeah.
Not fair.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that eventually his roommate, is it Louis? Louis, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would...
He, it's unfortunate to put it this way, but the whole will they or won't they between Danny and Georgia, because Danny seems to be in love with her, but hesitates with her, but I suppose after the whole rejection of her gift, he sees her run off with Tom, and then sees them, having sex on the beach, and that's like kind of breaks his heart, but at the same time he just kind of accepts it for as it is, because like it's sad face, but
Plus then you have the racial incident after, so you had to deal with that. That was a thing you had to you had to process that.
That was weird because
so weird.
It was like they're hanging out with one guy that's obviously they all go to school with him. He's African American.
Yes.
He's singing in the band. Everybody's at the sock hop. Everybody's at the bonfire out on the beach.
Yeah.
Everything's idyllic. You're assuming everybody's, chugging beer. And then
hanging out.
The N-word pops up all of a sudden, and people are chasing him, but like you couldn't really tell why, what,
and why did they all start fighting? Like they all started fighting with it. At first, it was like, okay, this is your. So it was started by. One of the characters, and later on, there's like the most bizarre fight scene I think I've ever seen. Yeah, granted,
so
not
he's
really
like
a big fight
the bully of the
and he becomes the
town.
Policeman. I guess I think that looked like he was wearing like a holster.
Maybe I didn't notice.
In the second scene, that
it looked like he grew up to be like a security guard.
Oh, maybe
possibly
that's
like
what
a local
it
sheriff. Because I was thinking like, wow, is he like a police officer in the town, or is he like a security guard in the town? Either way, it's like the screaming of a stereotype of the bully guy in high school becoming some sort of authority figure so he can push people around in his older years. But just like the strangest scene in on the beach, and then it just slowly turns into a potential like lynching situation.
Yeah, and then suddenly you see suddenly there's just like more black people and they're running away. And I just nothing makes sense in that scene.
I'm just like, run faster.
So
please run faster.
He's like, wait, is everyone mental?
Yeah,
I
and that
PCP.
happened right after, like you said, Tom and Georgia are having sex on the beach. And the thing that just stuck out to me about that, and I think I sort of mentioned it earlier, though, was that it's not this overly sensationalized sex scene.
No.
And at the risk of TMI a bit, I remember the first couple of times I had sex kind of emulating that sort of blissful look that she has on her face.
Oh,
just kind of like, this is how you do it, right? You're kind of, and she's looking quite blissed out, but she's also looking, relaxed.
Yes,
and it's,
exactly.
it's
not like a porn face.
No porn face.
She's got this lovely kind of, she's enjoying it and she's taking pleasure in it, and you're right, there's a certain presence and peace to it, which kind of surprised, because to me this movie is very enigmatic, because there are these moments where you're like, that is actually, that scene made sense to me, the way that was constructed made sense to me. And the acting made sense to me, and then the lynching happened. So I don't know what. I don't know what's
just
happening.
to be clear, there's no lynching.
There's no lynching. I'm sorry.
But all of a sudden there's a heightening and a chasing and a fighting. And
I don't know what was going on. Yes.
Definitely heightened emotions.
But I think why I wanted to bring that up, though, was just because when you're young and you're first getting your glimpses as to what sex means and what relationships means, that those other wacky exploitative movives usually you're not seeing much, or you're hearing
and that's not really the thing.
So I think
because you have to model. You have to model sex somehow, right?
Right.
And this is kind of, I definitely, I think I grew up definitely before internet porn, or the internet.
Sure.
You kind of had, you just had these movies to go on, basically.
It makes most sense.
So you kind of had to choose your model. You had to choose the, and this is a good model to choose in a way.
That scene.
Yeah, yes, like that, you're in, I mean, it's this thing where she says yes, right?
She's chosen.
She doesn't say no.
He's chosen, and she, like you said, she's relaxed, she's blissed out.
She cares about.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful scene. It's like a lovely beach.
Well, it's also the happiness that she was carrying when she was going to see Danny for the first time. It looks like this is the moment that she anticipated, and here's the moment she's experiencing it. So it's kind of nice in its own way.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't happen to our protagonist, whom we are attached to because we have his vision, but at the same time,
But he does get to be a peeker.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that's the, like, creepy thing, yeah. And she kind of sees him and is like... I thought the look on her face was sort of confusing but kind of great. It was like, I know you're watching, and in some ways also, like, they are really good friends, right? So it's like...
They all
this
are,
is
yeah.
something that you want to tell a good friend about. And I remember when I had a really good male friend that I knew had feelings for me, and when I had sex for the first time, he was a really, really good friend, and I just couldn't, I wanted to tell him, because to me it was like, I was madly in love, and it was like, it was just like, it wasn't perfect, but it was just like, nicely done. And, but I, and I told him, and it was like, I was super excited, and then I was, the minute it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, I am the biggest bitch in the world. Mm-hmm. Because I'm telling someone who, cares about me.
Gotcha, yeah.
And, this is probably really painful, but to me, I'm like telling my good friend, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I think for its faults and flaws, I think what I took away mostly from this was that the core relationships of the four friends felt fairly realistic. I mean, we don't really get to know the two other guys all that well.
We hardly really get to know Tom, who is the person that she loses her virginity to.
Right.
Like he's sort of a figurehead for something.
You mean of the group itself, or when he goes off? Because...
No, I mean throughout the movie.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right? Like...
Yeah. Yeah, and you are correct that, we don't get too much about them, but it's also rooted in reality as well, because much like high school friends that you're so close, but then this one goes off to college, this one goes off to war, this one goes off to the family business, and this one, well, she gets pregnant, and she ends up marrying the one over here. What was it, David? David was the one she ended up marrying and raising Tom's, child with them together. And he's very, again, she's pushing him around in the car, saying, go further. And she'll leave the baby with him, and she'll go off on her things, and he just accepts it as it is. So, it is kind of interesting. And also something I'll even throw in together. I remember going off to college, coming back, and then I'll just be in at a regular restaurant that I would go to constantly. And then I would see two people I knew from high school, and I'm just like, but what are they doing together? I don't understand that. It turns out they're married. And I'm like, but wait a minute, how did that actually happen?
Yeah,
I'm just like, well, life happens when you're away at college, and then people get to know each other, they marry each other, and then you move on. And so in the Facebook era, it's so much easier just to catch up with, like, oh, that person.
Yeah, because you see the little things. Like,
yeah,
these are snapshots where you don't see somebody for a year. That was a more common thing. And you maybe would exchange letters. And maybe, and then maybe email later, or some sort of thing. But it wasn't like, oh, I see that their kid won an award, like got an A on their spelling bee today. Like, you don't have that sort of thing. And so
interesting.
And then you can kind of make up you have this friendship that basically goes on in your head, or you have this relationship in your head.
Right.
The things you're saying just remind me that my friend Amy that I watched this with, I mean, I'm not going to go into major detail, but I'll just say she and I had so many of those experiences together. I mean, we were right with each other during these, losing our virginity, and we had crushes on similar guys, and we had times where, one of us was hooking up with somebody that the other person was really into, and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, I feel like it's just hearing you girls talk about that reminds me that these things are realistic, that stuff was happening.
Yeah. And you have this group of friends, and you are like kind of,
circling
each other. And I mean, that even happened, like I was saying when we did the apartment, I was talking about, like, it happened like when my husband and I got together. There were all these friends, and it was like, there's the girl I was really intimidated by, and I don't know. It's that definitely happened. Like my friends Kyle and Sean. I mean, my friend Sean went to her prom. We went to different high schools. New Jersey is very densely populated. And she went with my you know, like the guy that I was in love with. And
were you in love with?
No, I
Air
was
quotes?
like in
Okay.
love, like
Okay.
in love. He was the guy I lost my virginity to. I was madly in love with him. I mean, like first love, full on, you know, couldn't like, would drive past his car parked somewhere and would just kind of like, you know, swerve.
And
like full on love.
I'll see
First love.
I'll see your prom story, and I'll raise you. I mentioned this, I want to say, in a previous episode. My best friend was asked out by the guy I had a crush on. She did not like him, so she asked me to come with us. So basically, I could be like the whole like friend that she could latch onto, despite the fact that she was with him because she was uncomfortable, and she also knew that I liked him, so she was very uncomfortable. So I asked our other friend, so he got to go with like kind of 3 dates.
Oh yeah,
type of thing.
Story. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I don't know.
I just think it's interesting that does happen.
I'm actually just surprised I went to the prom. And that she went to the prom, now that I think about it. That's actually more surprising with us. But I did get to run. I wore a black velvet cape, and I did leave early and just ran through the parking lot going, I'm Batman.
That sounds like a great prom.
That was actually pretty
went to the prom with the girl that my brother lost his virginity
Oh,
to.
that's awesome.
Wow.
So yeah, that was another interesting thing is my brother was 2 years younger than me, so we hung out with like we were the core weirdos of the foothills. You know, we were all hanging out with each other, dating each other, whatever. Right. So
yeah, we had this thing. We had this whole thing, and because it was there was a lot of private schools, and it's a really densely populated place. We all hung out in this place, Palmer Square. There's actually still a Facebook group that we have. And the J. Crew moved in and kicked all the teenagers out. But it was like all the weirdos. So we had like the hippies and the straight edge and the punk straight edge. Then you had the punks that weren't straight edge. Then you had the alternative kids, and you know, the goth kids, like the whole catastrophe. And so the guy I actually went to the prom with, who I was sort of dancing around, he was this total hippie. I mean, he was like following the dead hippie. This was in the 80s, late 80s. And he shows up at my house dressed in like a perfectly fitting, full-on white tail tux, like white vest, whole 9 yards. Really well, and he's like, and I'm like, of course you're family, of course you own a tuxedo, like of course you're a like 18-year-old hippie dude who owns like tails.
That's a great segue into some weird. Oh, I forgot to ask what the explicit rating is on this podcast.
Oh, curse like crazy.
There's some weird shit that happens.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about the weird shit that happens in this movie?
Oh my god. Yes.
Where to begin?
Oh my gosh.
Well, if we're talking about people dressed in evening dress, or like, can we talk about the wedding?
Yes. Let's talk about the wedding.
Okay. Well,
I guess technically they're wearing a morning suit, but you know what I mean. You all know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't need to get pedantic.
I don't know what you mean, but that's okay.
It's okay. We'll explain.
So, but going back to Louis, the roommate in college. Danny gets introduced to his sister,
right?
And Louis comes from a very, very, very wealthy family, a steel stock owning family, I assume, made lots of money in steel, and the father is
ironic because his father is a steel worker.
Yes. He gets introduced to the sister. What's really strange is that their courtship seems very like just on the surface. So it's like, I suppose he's in love with her, but all you get to see is like the friction between Danny and her father. What was her name? I forget her name.
I don't even think it was important or relevant.
I don't think he ever mentioned. But you know what's weird too? That it's Louis' sister, and at one point they talk about basically how they both like. Louis like, look, I need to get laid, and then like the next scene basically is like introduces him, Danny, to his sister,
right?
And like I was like, this is so creepy, and then it's like. And then you see him getting out of her car, and he's like, yeah, you got laid. And I'm like, it's his sister. Like, it's one thing to be like, it's nice that you two kids are in love, but like a sister, like it was so like.
I don't have those types of well wishes for my siblings. So there's the relationship there, and sure enough, towards the end of it, he's finishing up his studies, and they decide to get married, but the father is having none of it whatsoever, and it just feels like your classic "you're not good enough for my daughter" scenario. And I thought I was just kind of reading it as just like the blank on the surface, just like you're just a philosophy major who's not going to be able to provide for my daughter, you're just in it for the money type of thing.
Well, he even says, would you, basically paraphrasing it, would you fight for her?
Yeah.
Which is similar to his relationship with his own father, where his father asks him to fight him and he doesn't. So we do know there are things he will fight for, but nobody's giving him an example of
but also
the
like,
fathers
like
aren't
that violent, like he will fight with his
words
person, but he's not going to fight, like he's not going to commit violence, because it's that's kind of how I got it. I don't know.
Right.
I have no idea.
And then again, I wasn't positive if I was reading it correctly, but after he, Danny just mentioned, he's just like, I want to marry your daughter. And there was just like, the father's just like, all right, well, he's actually referring to her as property. Yeah. And I'm not giving her up. And I'm like, oh, this is one of those families.
Also, there's a weird scene. Mm-hmm. There was a weird scene in there. I kind of had to watch it twice because it was creeping me out. Right. He's going to the manor, the estate for the wedding. Right. And he goes upstairs and he sees his fiance run, like crying across.
Well, this is after, actually. There was 2 scenes. Allow me to back up one step.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No. So at the dinner itself, you see the father go into the daughter's room and her head is down and she's all sad. I'm just like, oh my God, he's just going to yell at her. And then I will say this in my head. I'm just like, if I'm reading this in a weird way, it feels like he has one of those molesty father things going on. And sure enough, yes, the next scene, this is what you were referring to.
I didn't even catch that first one.
I did. So, so sure enough, there's a second scene where Danny's walking up the stairs and he sees his fiance run out of her room and her crying. And are her clothes a little bit kind of yanked or something like that?
No, hard to tell.
No, it's actually the father coming out.
That's the thing. And then the father
adjusting his clothing or something.
And then when he sees him, he gives him this look like that's why I had to go back, because I was like, for some reason, I also was watching kind of a bad, cheap DVD of it, but I was like, wait, is that not the dad? Is that some other dude?
And I was thinking, is that the dad and his wife, and he has an estranged relationship with his own wife? That's what I thought also could have been. The wife, and maybe he's, mad or discouraged or something about his daughter being in love with somebody, but
taking it out
and going on to have a happy marriage where his marriage is horrible or something. But then I realized, oh no, that's he's his daughter. That's not his wife.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was because it all happens really quickly, and I was and as I said, this is kind of a bad DVD, so I was like, maybe I'm just not seeing clearly.
And I don't remember any of this.
Of course.
Okay. I don't remember any of this. Yeah. This is all a complete surprise.
Well, it's pretty subtle, actually. I had to rewatch it.
And nor would I imagine you this processing. And, you probably just remember you're probably just like myself, where you highlight the scenes that were just poignant and just kind of do that. Whereas this thing is just completely wiped memory.
Yeah. Because I've watched movies for this podcast, and I'm like, I rewrote this whole movie. Totally. What happens, I do not remember. And how did I not remember? Because it's really memorable. But it's wait, I rewrote this whole movie in my head, as you do when you're a teenager. Mm-hmm. And then, so then the wedding.
The wedding, first of all, beautiful really dress.
Lovely wedding. Gorgeous dress.
Yeah, and it was
definitely would do that.
It was just fascinating. This is actually the part where my husband walked in as I was watching the movie.
Was this the one?
Yeah, he just kind of walks in, he sees that, and sure enough, you see, everyone just having the smiles at one another, and then the father comes out. It looks like that the bride and groom are about to make a toast, but the father comes in to make a toast himself really quickly first. I'm like, oh, okay, he's going to step on their moment. That's what fathers do when they're very angry.
Supposed to make a father's
weird stuff that happens before that, because the father's upstairs, right?
And he's staring
out the window. There is a back and forth of the camera between him, a blonde kid we've never met before.
Exactly. Who I kind of looks like Danny when he was little.
Right.
But not quite.
And then the father's also makes eye contact with Danny's father. Danny's father gives him a knowing nod.
Yeah.
And then he's also assessing. I felt like assessing the crowd.
Sure.
Georgia's running around fancy free. Yeah. She's got her baby on that baby. I feel like was a baby for like 8 years.
Yeah. By the way, time didn't quite work out.
She's got her baby on her back. She's dressed very bohemian and. Like 70s,
and she keeps leaning over,
and
the kid's in one of those like hiking kind of kiddie backpacks is probably the closest to it. And she's dressed super bohemian, and everybody else is like
formal pastel.
And so she keeps leaning over, and the baby it kind of looks like he's about to fall out of the.
But the blonde kid appears. Now we never see. He seems to be seeing there's something up with the dad up there,
right?
And he tries to even go tell somebody.
He tries to tell
alert somebody.
What seems to be his dad or something.
But I mean, I can't believe how many times they go to this window up high where the father of the bride is looking down, and there's so many shots of that.
And you're like, why?
What is going on?
There's so much interesting stuff going on in the wedding that they could shoot. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like a weird wedding. There could have been the whole thing with like the parents being from another socioeconomic class, and in fact being the workers possibly of or like
they're all just out on the lawn and socializing,
friends
and clinking and
and it just seems so much more ominous beforehand, and it's like I could feel myself thinking that this is going to go badly, but in the badly he's going to embarrass them, not what actually does happen. Who would like to take the reins on this?
I think it's your movie. I think you gotta
No, I'll tell you, I don't remember anything that he said. Did he say anything?
One thing. I think I remember what he said is everyone says he's like, you're not losing I'm not losing a daughter, and everyone's waiting for the next line, which is like, I'm gaining a son.
Hooray.
And you're like, this is weird, and you just keep saying it. Like, he said it like 3 times. He's like, I'm not losing a daughter, and then he's like, he says something like, and I don't. Do you have the exact quote?
I don't have the exact quote, but he was just like, I'm not losing a daughter.
Yeah, and then the last one was, I'm not losing a daughter.
Yeah,
he pulls out a gun, shoots the daughter,
square
in the chest.
Yes, shoots the daughter.
And she's standing she's standing on a it's like a stairway, but it's staircase, but it's like, a staircase that has it's like a balcony.
Right.
Type thing. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact word, but.
So he shoots her in the chest, then goes to shoot
falls over.
Danny.
Yeah.
Does shoot him, but you can tell it's not quite exactly like in the heart.
Yeah.
And then.
Like it's in the head or something.
Then commits suicide. Shoots himself in the mouth. In the mouth. Which we don't see too much of, luckily.
Yeah. Very deep.
And then, Georgia's screaming, everybody's screaming and yelling, and then that's that. So I did not.
And then the next scene, you
I
see him, and you're like,
there were tragedies in the movie. I did not remember what it was. So
can we talk about the other death that occurs? I mean, that occurs on screen, which is like. I don't know why, but I kept flashing back to, we still had like those movies about like PCP, PCP being bad. We still watched those in like a high school or mostly junior high. I think by high school they were like, I don't think a lot of people are doing PCP anymore. We got other things to worry about. It's the late 80s. There's a lot to worry about. And I guess she's at some party or there's a drug trip. And I have no idea why there's a working car on what looks like the 5th or 6th floor.
Is this meant to be like Studio 54S? This is several years later.
More like
Like this
the
is
factory.
Yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
see, I see.
totally.
So-
It like seemed, it didn't seem.
And I always took the driver of the car, which is Glenne Headly, by the way.
I saw that. I
Oh.
kept staring
as
at her, and I'm like,
partner, her
that's what it
girlfriend or
is.
yeah,
something.
she's like, she's so familiar. She's so familiar, and I had to look it
Oh
up.
my
I'm like,
god! Okay,
oh,
okay.
that's really
yes,
cool.
that was making me crazy too.
Yeah, so Georgia is at this party in the factory, and sure enough, while on some sort of drug,
There was
You
like
just
the first. It
assume
was probably
they're all-
acid, but for some
yeah.
reason I just kept thinking of all of because all the PCP movies were always like PSAs that you watched in health class were always like they think they can fly and they jump off a roof.
Right.
Which, I never did PCP, but having taken acid several times, I never actually thought I could fly.
Yeah.
I just
maybe I was
wonder-
doing it wrong.
I'm just wondering why the keys were still in the car.
Yeah. And
I
how
don't
they
know.
get it
Well,
up
she's
to the
telling
fifth
her to
floor.
drive forward, right? Like,
Yes.
drive towards her.
I thought she was just telling her to come to me, get
Oh,
out of
maybe
the car,
get out of the car. Yeah, you're probably
yeah,
right.
I actually got that too, but that makes it a
That
lot more
makes a lot
sense.
more sense.
But also, why is there a car on the sixth floor? Like, I thought maybe it was like a car that didn't work anymore, and then that's where because like the factory and the filming.
I was thinking it was some warehouse, but yeah, like in a warehouse.
The whole thing is that it was up high.
Up high, yeah.
And so that's why she like
So she
watches and
backs
dies.
out.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
does she go through a window or
Yes.
just
A
a wall? She backs out.
I rewatched this
hits
part.
the
I
ground.
was
The
like, what
car
is
hits
happening?
the ground several stories
Yeah.
down
And
and
it
bursts
explodes.
into flame.
and
yeah.
exploded very loudly.
Also, not a thing that way. But
Yeah.
but regardless,
Yeah.
and then Georgia's horrified. And I feel like that's another one of those like slightly missed opportunities in that movie. But that was bonkers.
It
Did not see that coming.
That
Yeah.
I remembered.
That you did?
Yeah.
I think too because the whole like, at that age, I'm watching this. I'm watching Rocky Horror. I'm
Yeah.
seeing like characters that are gay or characters that
Yeah.
are cross-dressing characters that are getting together that are of the same sex and stuff like that. And I almost my memory was that her and Glenne Headly were like
Lovers.
but you never really see
I
that.
actually suspected that too. Like when I was watching it, I suspected that because
Well, there was nothing blatant.
because that's also would be her thing, right?
Right.
I mean, she obviously really liked not only tension, she liked sex. She wanted to. I think she even mentions like being attracted to women and men. I think she mentions being bisexual, but maybe I'm just thinking of Isadora Duncan.
Yeah.
Georgia doesn't strike me as the type of character to be confined by
Yeah.
heterosexuality or
course.
even any type of thing so much as just open to the experiences
and it was the
of love.
60s, and and it's like a sort of a. I mean that seemed like a cool party until the car.
It
thing.
did, yeah, until the car thing. But yeah, that happens a little bit after the earlier scene.
It does happen, yeah.
Because there's a few different, and we don't need to go, totally step by step, but there's
Yeah.
a few iterations of basically her and Danny coming to each other.
Because she basically
back and
goes to
forth.
see him after, like, while he's recovering from, physically recovering from the worst wedding. The worst wedding, hopefully. Like, the fact that he would even get married again. Like, I would just be like, no, I'm out. Like, I couldn't even see a tuxedo after that.
It's also heartbreaking because he recovers, he leaves the hospital, he goes back to the home just to get his trunk
Oh my
back.
God, the mom.
And the mom's there, and but at the same, also, Louis died.
Yeah.
While he was in the hospital, so the mom is just, and I felt bad after the wedding shooting. I'm just like, oh crap, when's Louis gonna go?
I know,
Because he said any day now, any day.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm like already, like my heart was breaking for the mother.
That's
So
she's
she
just, like,
loses
in a house.
every single person in her family.
In, like, the
and
course
then
of a
does
year.
a trippy, like, death scream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So that's just
Yeah.
the bits and pieces of what we described, and just for convenience sake of the listeners, in the end there is just like they come together, Georgia and Danny come together, and they're it's not right, they fall apart, they fight, they return, they go back, they go, he visits his friends, and years have passed, and thank you for your observation about how like that baby has been baby for like 8 years.
Yeah, he's like a toddler. Like the Tom goes to Vietnam,
comes back.
He has 2 like 5-year-old kids,
and that kid is
like,
still
maybe I don't know. Like I was getting 4 and 6 out of that.
I was feeling like one was maybe 8.
Yeah, maybe, but like it was, but they were like children.
Yeah.
Whereas like
that kid's
still a toddler. Like still a toddler.
So
don't know how.
So let's look at the actual time frame then. So if we were just, because I was thinking like, so was this like a 5-year span? So they're like all 23 at the end of this in my logical brain. But let's say we're talking.
Yeah, it's supposed to be about 10.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with 10 years then. And it's just like we can't be together, and then back together. But then we know the story. But in the end, they find their way to one another, and you have the friends there, Tom with his wife and his 2 daughters, and you have David, and he has his, I assume, girlfriend at the time, or possibly wife.
I think she's pregnant.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
She really did
giggling and crying a lot.
And they're just like, and it's good because you're like, oh, he found like somebody who really adores him. Like she's looking at him. That was so satisfying. Like she's looking at David because he's kind of the sad sack. Like first, he's like kind of being used by Georgia, but then also like he's got this whole thing where he doesn't want to become his father, but he ends up being his father, and he always looks kind of depressed. And then you see this woman like looking at him, just adoring him, and you're like, yes. Yes, I'm happy.
Let's have him be happy.
I just want him to be happy.
And Danny is off to be a teacher, a professor.
Which he's been before.
What's up?
Which he's been before. That was the weird thing. He was like a professor, and then he was a steel worker, and then he was a professor.
No, I don't remember the first professor part.
I don't either.
Oh.
Now I gotta no.
Anyways.
Because I remember writing that. Anyway,
so that's
matter.
the part. And in the end, they're all together. There is this friendship. There is this happiness. They're all together. My question to you, with the relationship between Georgia, we'll focus on Danny and Georgia, especially, with the fact that the relationship spans all these friendships. But when do you think they fell in love?
I think they fell in love, before the movie started.
Okay.
Off screen.
Okay.
Because when we meet our first of many narrators.
I know. Exactly. We
a neighborhood friend, an elder woman who's kind of observing.
Is she Georgia's mom?
No, it was her neighbor.
Neighbor.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, because she said she was next door.
Yeah.
Or because she basically, she clearly lived in the house, and so when she thought it was nice that they would come and...
No, not her relative, her neighbor.
Neighbor,
okay.
yeah.
That makes
so
sense.
She lets us know that the 3 boys are in love with Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like when Georgia is telling the other boys early in the film that Danilo has been writing her poetry, which later on he, at a certain point, is on a televised...
I remember that.
Oh, yeah, like a quiz show.
And uses that opportunity to get a question answered incorrectly, but is able to say that poetry. I thought that was pretty romantic.
That is kind of cool. Actually. When I realized what he had done, I'm like, did he rip off that poetry from that author?
Yeah. Right. Where I was like, wait, no, that's not how that poem goes.
I don't know poetry.
So I feel like she was in love with him when she was talking about the poetry that he had written her.
Okay.
That she was already in love.
Okay. No, that's a good point. I really like that. When I was watching this, back and forth, I'm just like, no, I totally, I'm with you. It's like it happened off screen because there's just this rapport between them that's very young and very naive, but at the same time, it's very real. But the fact that for some reason they won't commit to one each other, just like the description of it, I'm just like, well, is it, and do I quantify it, or is it something where it just kind of extinguishes as it goes? But it clearly doesn't, because he maintains the photo of her every time she comes back in his life. He's just with open arms, and then it's just like, no,
Except
I can't.
for one time.
Well, He had been through a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, she goes to visit him in the hospital after the
He's
wedding.
like, I'm not my best self
Yeah.
right now.
I look truly awful.
Yeah.
For one.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Just like this happened before we were even walking into this movie, so I can't pinpoint it through this movie because this is just a growing arc. And this happened beforehand. What do you think?
I think that I think she's attracted to him through the whole thing. I think he does definitely fall in love with her in that high school. Like, I ascribe a lot, you're sort of making up something in your head too. But then I think, so I think for him, it happens off screen.
Before movie?
Before movie.
Got it.
Or at the very least, it's just one of those, like, crushes that never leaves you. And I think for her, I actually do think it happens in the end, or I think before, there's this scene where they actually get together, which is that they have this weird pseudo fight at the very last scene, which ends the movie. I think she is a weird fight, though. I think maybe that's when she realizes it, like before, because she's thinking about him coming back and she's thinking about seeing him. But I also wonder, there's a scene where she actually marries David, and he basically gets really, really mad at her because he thinks, oh, of course it makes sense that it's Tom because you guys were already together. But if it's David and you're pregnant with his kid, but now that we figure out it's David, you didn't give me a chance, basically. Like, why didn't you tell me you had this window of time where you were, like, available? And then she just gets really stroppy and literally, like, just walks off down the street. Which, isn't really a gracious way to behave at your own wedding, but, whatever. It's your special day.
Also, why was he so dang late to that wedding?
That's the other thing. She's like, we invited him, but, like, they were coming out. And you would think that they would have talked at some point before that wedding. But anyway, there's some plot holes in this movie. But
yes.
I think that basically, yeah, that's I feel like she kind of realizes, because she's been through all these she's been through a lot of experiences. And she's probably just at an age where she understands how to be like what she needs, what is, that she does need to be herself, but that she doesn't necessarily need to sort of impose that on others. She can just be in the world without sort of needing all this attention. And I think it, like, sort of makes her realize, like, this is somebody who really sees me and has known me for a long time.
Yeah.
And and the fact that attraction is still there after 10 years. I don't know. That's my theory.
Okay. And then, now the next question, very important question. You don't have to go first, Heidi, if you don't want to, but what happens after this movie is over?
So, at the end of the movie, she says, okay, we'll relocate to somewhere the South.
Right, because he's going to school there.
Because he's going to teach.
He's teaching there, yeah.
And then she says, but the next move is mine. So, and he gives her a smile, like, sure, I'm down, I'm along for the ride. And I think that will work for a while. And I also felt like she still had this. I've known people like this where they do love people and they do have stability with them, or they do, want to raise children, but also they want to have this freedom. So I could definitely see tumultuousness in this relationship and her leaving for 6 months or going to India and going on her own journeys and coming back and them having that tension. And so I don't feel like it's, happily ever after, said and done. Everybody's just satisfied.
Gotcha. So even though he's smiling about it, you don't think it's going to go further along?
No, I think it'll go further along, but that she'll get restless.
Yeah.
So within the marriage, she'll take off at certain points, even though so I think it'll be just a tumultuous relationship. They may stay married for another 10, 20 years.
Okay.
But she'll have her time, and kind of like when she married David, he said, you know how she is.
Yeah.
She goes away and she comes back. So I think, that will be similar.
It wasn't even entirely clear when they were officially no longer together, like when they divorced. Because I don't remember when David and her divorced.
I don't think they show that.
Yeah, it's just kind of
like,
there's a lot of
you can
holes
kinda
that we just kind of
Okay.
We got to fill in the blanks throughout this movie.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. Okay.
Key to watching this movie.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like just like I'm cribbing off of your phone notes or anything like that, but I agree with you that at this moment it feels very good, but those fleeting moments when they were together, and it was very nice because they came back together, and it was, he was having a moment, but then she just had to run away from it. I don't know if she's going to run away with it. They're going to go down south in my brain. He's going to start teaching. He's going to feel stability and comfort, and they're going to have the family there. And I think you're correct. I think she's going to get restless. And I think he will put up with I get the next one, and they'll move again. But I think when it happens the third time, that's going to be his breaking point. So it's not going to be her disappearing. That's going to be her trying to actually maintain the unit. But I need to be able to be free, but I want to respect that you want to maintain this unit. So she's going to try to keep doing it. And I think he's going to crack after the third one, because even though he respects the fact that she's trying to maintain it, he also understands that you can't cage her. So he's going to say, we're done. He's going to maintain. He's going to provide the stability for the child that they have together. And there won't be any more kids, because I think he's going to have that moment. Actually, you know what? I take that back. They're going to have one kid together. And that's going to be his stabilizer. When he realizes that this is not going to end. I'm going to be there for these children. Go be as you have to be.
And maybe he'll try to hook back up with that Yugoslavian nurse that got the shaft.
Oh, yeah.
So bad for her.
She was so great. So
bad
understanding. Presumably, it's now 1971.
Ish.
So he is an English professor in 1971 with his Bohemian wife.
Mm.
They're going to move to the South. They're going to be in this university town.
Okay.
I'm envisioning full on, like, they're going to have, there's going to be a lot of macrame being done here. There's going to be a lot of wheat germ, and there's going to be there's going to be some, there's going to be some like swapping among. There's going to be some swapping among the faculty.
Some key party
type situation. There's going to be there's definitely going to be like a sort of a consciousness raising rage thing. I'm getting all of this, by the way, Robin, if you're listening, from the Serial, which is like, I love I just recently discovered this book a couple of years ago. It was a year ago. It's about this. It's about like the 70s in Marin. So maybe this is strongly.
What's it called?
It's called The Serial, and it was serialized in the Marine Sun Journal. And it's kind of like making. It was kind of like if Herb Cain did Marin in the 70s, but it's this woman. I wish I could remember her name, and I'm so sorry, because it's brilliant and you should read it. It's like a 2-hour, but it's hysterically funny.
Go on.
Okay. Also check out my Pinterest board about it. So it's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be, there's going to be that's what they're going to kind of, fight about at some point, because he's, he's going to just be trying to get his career. Because the thing he does not want is the economic, he doesn't want to be a steelworker. And he works really hard. That's the one thing about him. He clearly has a very strong work ethic. So I think they might have a kid. I think there's... I think it's going to be harder to do that second move because of tenure considerations. And when you're a professor, you don't it's not like you can just move to Cleveland and get a job professoring. I mean, you can, but you know what I mean? It's just, there's a different sort of cycle. And I think I agree with you that she's going to start going off on these longer trips. I love India. I think India, I was totally seeing it. I see their apartment. I see their parties. I think, and then, we're going to move into the 80s. So that's now like, they'll, I think it's going to become a little harder. I do think they're going to divorce, and I do think they're going to, because, and I think one of the things is, how do you reconcile being like the fantasy in your head with the reality of the person that you have to live with. I do think that in the end, they are going to remain friends for the rest of their lives, and they're going to feel like that's a person who they can always go back to talk to, which is going to cause major problems with his second wife, who's going to be or his third wife, I guess, technically. Oh, oof. I think they're going to have a very low-key wedding. Or maybe he just never gets married again. I think that's actually what's going to happen. Forget the third wife, but I think it's going to cause, because they are always going to be, that touchstone, and they're going to trust each other for the rest of their lives, like after that rockiness. So I think that.
Okay.
This is a very visual thing that I imagine them doing.
Nice.
Well, it's interesting because I love the pictures you're painting, because in the beginning, I think David mentioned something about Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Which, for that character, it would be the one from the 50s.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when we get into 1971, then there's the 1970s Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which has, I could see them right into that world with the macrame and all the plants and all the. So
I think I have a weird, I think I didn't realize until the time, but I do have a sort of visual obsession with the 70s, mostly because I came here in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
I came to the U.S. in 1980, and so I spent the 70s in the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So there's this whole carryover, and I was just like trying to figure out that world, and I think we still had like a lot of 70s clothes. I was just like, I'm just sort of really, especially California in the 70s,
Yes.
and that's also a time that my husband was a kid, or was sort of a teenager. I'm always like asking him about it, but I didn't. I'm like, why am I have all these like visions of places in the 70s? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a weird obsession with that. I kind of forgot.
There it is.
Anyway, there it is.
There it is. 4 friends.
Mm-hmm.
Heidi, thank you so much.
I know.
For
thank
joining
you.
us.
Thanks for inviting me. It was really fun to think about what movie to pick, and then just to know that I was going to be hanging out with you ladies for a good long time and be able to really dig into it.
Yeah.
Get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, that was super fun. I usually see things a couple days, or I usually see them twice, but just because of this is not an easy movie to find, by the way. Like, it's not available on streaming, but if you see it, and I know for a fact that it's not available in any DVD rental place in San Francisco, because I called every single one.
Wow.
Or went to them.
I straight up bought it on Amazon.
Well, that's
and
planning. That's because you planned.
Well, I bought it. I messaged with you, Diana, and I was like, it's coming, and I'm going to be able to see it.
Yeah.
So, it came in just in the nick of time for me to watch it this morning. So it worked out.
Yeah, thank you, Amazon.
Well, I picked it up on Netflix, so I shared with Polina, so we were able to see
really
it.
helped.
Yeah, so
that was awesome. Thank you so
Netflix
much for that.
DVD actually. So woohoo, 30-day free trial. Worked out.
I didn't. I was like, they still do DVD.
I hate to break this to you, Polina, but
Yeah, I know.
they still exist.
They still exist.
So
From Betamax to streaming.
yes.
Right.
So here's something that's very important. Heidi Bennett. You can listen to her with her podcast, Vibrant Visionaries. You have completed the whole movies themselves, but you also have Spinal Tap Minute and Cabin Minute Cast as your 2 podcasts.
Right.
Any other creations that I missed that you want to mention?
No, I think that's it. Vibrant Visionaries is the one that's most recent. So it's me talking with multi-creative, vibrant visionaries. So I am actually kind of going through the old virtual phone book and contacting people that I maybe hung out with in Sacramento, or a couple of friends that I did go to high school with, and then am, going out, circling out into people that I've barely met or have never met, but what they all have in common is that I think they're interesting in doing many different creative things. And so the podcast is a casual conversation similar to what we're all doing here. But it's all about creativity and creative process and sort of what it is to live as a multi-creative, as somebody who, might be a freelancer or working for themselves in most cases, or collaborating with different people on different days or different months or different years. So there's filmmakers and artists and writers and podcasters, certainly musicians, but they all do, a combination of different interesting things. And I think it's been great talking to the people I've spoken with so far, and it's important also, I feel like, in the podcast to give some value that is something that you're going to take away, not only to maybe be inspired by their, what they do, but also kind of understand a little bit more about it, but also as creative beings, and I think we all are, is to maybe get some tips or resources on how to live creatively.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to. I've listened to Spinal Tap Minute as I mentioned, and I'm too chicken to see
The Cabin in the Woods.
But she convinced me.
I told her.
Broke me. It was a weak moment, and I promised Diana that I would get over myself. But I read. I briefly read the transcript to the one for the body positive yoga, which I'm like, I need to listen. I'm gonna go listen to it on my way home. But that was the coolest part, was sort of the practical. There's the inspiration, but the sort of practical tips and like how she structures her day or life, her week. Like, it was just that part I found, as really, really, really fascinating.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely share with you ladies exactly that link, because that was what we called a preview to Vibrant Visionaries, but it was also kind of a led podcast episode. So I launched that on Spinal Tap Minute because we hadn't launched Vibrant Visionaries yet.
Okay.
And Amber Carnes of Body Positive Yoga, she and I last year, earlier in 2018, led a retreat together. And so we did this podcast as kind of a way to get to know each other a little bit better, and then to also let people know about the retreat and what it was going to be about. So she's a total multi-creative. So it was kind of like a co-interview.
Oh, interesting. Now I'm really psyched to listen to the other one.
So I'll share that link.
Yeah, can we put it in the show notes so that people can find it? No, that sounds fantastic. And I heard your kickoff for Vibrant Visionaries, and it's just a great show. And I hear the multi-creatives, and I'm almost a half a creative, so I'll check you out.
I don't think that's true.
No, that is not true. Not the way your brain works.
I'll pick up another 3/4, and then we'll talk.
Awesome.
All right. And then, so platforms, iTunes, or everything you can think of, you can find it. Fantastic.
And,
I love that.
We'll have details in the show notes.
Absolutely. We will make it so you can find Heidi and iTunes, or I'm sorry, Twitter, Facebook.
Yeah, so you can find me pretty much everywhere as Heidi M. Bennett, Bennett. And then for Vibrant Visionaries, I'm actually not on Facebook because I don't really like Facebook. I love being on Facebook to be in specific groups, like with you girls and some other podcast buddies and other creative buddies, but I'm definitely moving away from spending a lot of time on Facebook. So the places that I spend most of my time are on Instagram, Vibrant Visionaries on Instagram, and Heidi M. Bennett on Instagram. On Twitter, Heidi M. Bennett on Twitter. Vibrant Vizcast on Twitter. And then I have a Patreon for Vibrant Visionaries. So if you're listening to that and you're like, oh my gosh, I want more of this, I want to hang out with people who are other multi-creative people, I have tiers all the way from $1 to, up to hire, but it's really, that's where I want to create a community of people so that we're not hanging out getting distracted by all the craziness in the world. We're really there to hang out and support each other and find camaraderie and help each other with problem solving and get our creative projects done. So
excellent. Yes, all in the show notes. We'll make sure that people can find the awesomeness that is Heidi Bennett.
Yes.
You're
Which
welcome.
cannot be contained in this small place.
All right.
Okay.
So we are available at Twitter ourselves. We're at
Yes, we are.
HEAMCast.
HEAMCast.
You can find us on Facebook at Happily Ever Aftermath. And if you have any comments that are kind of long form or you want to keep them sort of private, you can reach us contact at HEAMCast.com.
If you wanna, I need to do a shout out to your brother because I do feel like he's just based on his emails is my brother.
The emails are lovingly read. Single tears go down the eyes when you realize, it's just okay. If you want to give us a single tear because we're warm and fuzzy, contact at HEAMCast.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Whatever you want. A review. The reviews are great because whenever we read reviews, we're waiting for the mean one, but it hasn't come yet.
No,
or maybe it's coming right now.
No, don't put that negativity out there. Calm down. It's okay.
Me.
It's okay. It's okay. So yeah,
I was brought up.
If you like the podcast, please tell a friend. We really appreciate that. And
tell a different friend that I suggested that you steal their phone and forcibly subscribe on. That one is probably bad at you right now. So pick another friend.
If you have more than one friend. Heidi had mentioned that we are also part of a couple of groups. We were fortunate enough to meet with a Lady Pod Squad meetup.
Which is where we met in person for the first time.
Yeah.
And it became real.
Hashtag Lady Pod Squad. Check out some amazing podcasts led by some amazing ladies. And, so next time, this is really exciting because we are going to be joined by Steve and Izzy from Everything I Learned from Movies podcast. And we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Nerds.
This is one of those movies I'm embarrassed I've watched all the way through. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched it all the way through. I think it was on TV. I would watch like half of it.
Won't be long, mark my words. Time has come for Revenge of the Nerds. I may have seen it a few times.
You may have. You obviously.
So next time, we're looking forward to that.
Watch the movie.
I'm so excited. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye-bye.
bye.